The United States coming off a 2-0 loss to Japan in the first of two friendlies that they have in the very last stages of World Cup prep. What did we like, if anything? What are some changes that we're going to have to see going into the Saudi Arabia game? And as far as those spots that were up for question, did anybody make a significant impact to secure those spots? That's what we're going to talk about next on this episode of Extra Time, the U.S. Men's National Team Soccer Podcast. Diving right into things, the United States 2-0 to Japan. Probably one of the worst games that I've had to watch of the United States men in a really long time. And it comes at a time where I felt like U.S. soccer had been building and building and building, and we'd been on the rise. And the games like this, coming out of the blue like this, while they're not unusual for the culture of U.S. soccer, my brother and I talked a while ago about how the United States seems to have this culture of like a coin flip, right? We can show up to a match and we can be insanely quality and we can generate tons of goal-scoring opportunities and we can really thoroughly take advantage of our opponents. And then we have other games like this one where we show up and no one's on the same page. No one's trying. No one is coming up with any kind of creativity. Nobody can string passes together. And it just leaves you confused and bewildered. I've watched some documentaries on Amazon and Netflix. There's a series, Sunderland Till I Die on Netflix. It's a great series. I think you should check it out. And there's also a series called All or Nothing on Amazon Prime. And it takes you behind the scenes for teams, and it gives you this coach's perspective. And you get to hear the things the players say to each other in the locker room. You get to hear the way that the coach approaches it. And one of the biggest criticisms to the men's national team right now, which is in the forefront, so we'll talk about it, is Greg Berhalter and his tactics and his strategies and this sort of nonchalant attitude that he brings to the media and to press, which is getting really old really fast. And it's a very American way of doing things. Sports in America have this tendency to sort of, it feels like you have this script, right? Like you read, you say the same thing, you articulate it in just such a way that everybody kind of knows what you're getting at, but you didn't really say it, so we don't have to worry about it. And up until this moment, Greg's been the master of this, right? We're evaluating players based on their health, and we're not going to make any decisions at this time because I want to give everybody a fair shot. And yeah, we're just going to kind of play it by ear. Yeah, we're just going to kind of see these things, or it's up for grabs, or we're just not sure yet, or I like to see a little bit more intensity, or what have you. He's made a couple statements recently in regard to this game, which were a little bit more forward, right? Like there was no personality out on the field, right? Like he was willing to state, I didn't know who was out there, right? Nobody made an impact for me because nobody made an impression that if you watch the game, you were like, oh, Weston McKennie was there, or, Ferreira was there, or Dest was there. Nobody made any of those kinds of impacts. But it still begs this overarching question of does Greg fall in discussing with us the tactics or lack of tactics, or where his team fell short? Not all the time in English Premier Soccer, but lots of times the coaches do allude to a little bit more than we get from American coaches. We get a little bit more of where the team fell short, the strategies to come forward. You get the same similarness with the way they talk about their players, right? You might get called out on, like, what about this player's mistake in this yellow card that they drew in the penalty? And you get a response such as, well, it's really tough to tell in that moment, and everybody was emotional, and everybody was, it's just hard to tell what may going through the player's mind. I trust my player. I think that they made the best decision, in the moment. And so when you think about that, and you're a fan like I am of the U.S. men's team, and you're a reporter and you're trying to get information, we're in the dark for what has been going on. And it's kind of just been building and building and building and building. It's been addressed the whole way, but way back in September of last year when we were starting this whole cycle and we weren't sure where things were going to be, we expected to be in the dark. We were okay being in the dark. But here we are just a month and a half out from the World Cup, and we're in the dark. We don't know the guaranteed set of players that we're going to have on the plane. There's still too much discussion over what we're looking for in our strike force, what we're looking for in our goalies, what we're looking for tactics-wise. And that doesn't sound good. Now, granted, behind the scenes, sure, Berhalter might have tons of things that he's got, and he just doesn't want to allude to it, maybe for some strange tactical perspective of not letting the other teams know what we're going to play. It's on camera. Everybody knows, right? We're watching everything. And we're not the only team that's falling apart. We're all aware of England's shortcomings, right? Losing again to Italy and finding themselves just nowhere in the UEFA Nations League, right? Suffering the same kind of embarrassment that Italy would when they win the Nations League but then fail to make the World Cup. So we find ourselves in all of these positions. My camera struggles to focus on myself and lean away and pet my dog for a second. He's giving me some whining. We look around and we see this United States team, and it causes me to ask this question: is what we're feeling, this lack of maybe not vision but maybe direction, is it also there for the players? Do we have players who are getting on the pitch and they're having to guess? They're having to sort of figure it out themselves. And the reason that I say this was because if you watch this Japan game, that's what it looked like. It looked like 10 guys trying to knock the ball around on the field, all just guessing at where their teammates were going to be. I mean, the amount of turnovers that we had and the amount of giveaways that we had is insane. I mean, you have anywhere from 39 turnovers in our defensive third all the way up to 54 turnovers in our end in just the first half. And, that obviously comes with a little bit of subjectivity as to whether we thought the pass was going to be connected in the first place. But we're talking from all over the field, right? This is not just from an Aaron Long who's trying to earn his spot or a Walker Zimmerman who's trying to figure out with his playing partner. You guys have been playing together, right? This is not just from new left backs or new guys trying it out in the midfield, right? Like a Luca Della Torre who we've seen before and hasn't done this. We're seeing turnovers from Weston McKennie who, gives Japan their first very meaningful chance in the first game, or one of their first meaningful chances, and ultimately results in a goal. Before that, a turnover to give what probably could have been a goal, had their striker connected a little bit better. And we definitely were not prepared to play against the press that Japan had, right? We statistically know the United States is bad at playing into a low block, right? The teams let us attack them. We struggle to break them down offensively, and they counterattack and get nowhere. Japan tried something different and had no problem just deciding to press us for the whole game. And it looked like a clinic. If you wanted to figure out how to play defense against the United States, there's another way that doesn't work against us. We played a lot of watch and hope, right? Lots of players hoping that somebody else on the field was going to be the one with the inspiration, the one with the talent, the one to take the initiative. And it was only a very few set of times that we saw a string of passes get connected that looked truly brilliant. There were moments with Giovanni Reyna and Weston McKennie where they would connect and things would look great. Play the ball up through to Brendan Aronson, and we'd have a string of 2 or 3 passes and we'd be on the break. We still saw the same struggles with the men in the final third, right? But we also had that quick burst very early on in the 8th or 9th minute where Sergiño Dest takes the ball up. He does what Dest is good at. He beats his man. He gets his ball in the box. And he plays the ball unmarked to Jesus Ferreira, right? And so one of the talking points to the video, I'll stop right here and make a statement. You lost it, Ferreira. It's gone. And realistically, looking at what we know Berhalter's going to do and what he wants to do, it's obviously not gone at all, right? Berhalter's going to keep him. Berhalter loves him. And I'm looking at a Josh Sargent. I'm looking at a Brendan Aronson. I'm looking at a P. Falk. There's somebody else who can play that role. At this point, Ferreira has given me no reason to believe that he's capable of doing this. So there's no loss at trying somebody else. Josh Sargent is at least scoring goals. P. Falk is at least scoring goals. I'm a bigger fan of Sargent than I am of Pefok, but at this point, I would take anybody, right? I'd take Haji right up there in front of Jesus Ferreira, because one of the things, if you guys follow other YouTubers, the Yank Report, he talked about him and his buddy. They talked about what's they call like the XG player, right? So he's always getting the goal scoring chances, but he's never capitalizing. And we can see why Berhalter seems to like Ferreira. He is a very good target forward. He has moments of brilliance and creativity where he can create scoring opportunities, and he seems to always be in the right spot, which is definitely something you're looking for in a striker. And we've had this mentality the whole journey that it's only a matter of time. Ferreira has been in the right spot so many times. Eventually, he's going to start scoring goals. And we saw the game against Grenada, and we thought maybe he'd figured out. He's got his confidence. He's got his 4 goals. Like, this is a big deal. And it's gone, right? And I wasn't very optimistic after that. I know that my brother is a huge proponent of this. He just likes Ferreira. He seems like those tactics. I've never thought Ferreira had a shot, and I've always been wanting to try something else out. And now here we are stuck with just the Saudi Arabia, game, with no real feasible way to try out other forwards, and shooting ourselves in the foot, knowing that the last couple of times that we even tried out forwards, we tried them out in bad conditions for under 45 minutes with very minimal support, or played them in games where the press was done because the result was over. And so we really are in the dark, right? I'm just going to kind of go to this theme throughout this entire episode. We're in the dark, right? We look at the midfield. There was talk that, what is it going to look like when we don't have a Yunus Musa to play the ball through, right? I've never been a huge fan of Yunus Musa, although granted, I don't think he's a bad player. I enjoy having him out on the pitch. He's somebody that I can get excited about. He has tons of moments of brilliance. My only frustration is he holds the ball too much. I don't think that's the reason that the United States midfield struggled. I tend to think we become too close-minded in that, both on the field and off the field as viewers, that if we believe that the only way the midfield can be successful is through a talented defensive center midfielder like Tyler Adams, then we're selling ourselves short. If we believe that we need a Tim Weah to stretch the right wing up there, I think we're selling ourselves short. We have other talented players. The problem goes back to Berhalter's tactics. Are we trying to play the ball to Christian Pasilic the same way we're trying to play the ball to his replacement, right? If Serginho Dest is going to attack up the flank, are we treating DeAndre Yedlin the same way? Now, granted, that's a complete other tangent because Yedlin has no right being on this roster, but you guys get what I'm getting at. So when you have a Luca de la Torre, right, let's bring this over. We'll bring it over to the starting lineup, right? Let's bring this over to the starting lineup, and we'll kind of get a chance to talk about it, right? So if you have a Sam Vines playing out on your wing and you're playing like he's Jedi Robinson, then you're doing him a disservice. And it seemed like we didn't make any kind of changes given the lineup that we had. We just played the same way, right? We just poured it in the exact same way, hoping that players would pick up and sort of get the hint and get the message as to what was happening. And it didn't work at all. We tried to build the ball out of the back with players who are not great with the ball at their feet, right? Walker Zimmerman makes amazing passes. He's shown us consistently he can hit the ball from the back all the way up to the front and send guys in going through. We haven't been wowed by our building out of the back with these guys. We also haven't been disappointed, and I think that reason is because of the talent in our midfield. We have an Adams that will check back to the ball. He's backed up by a Weston McKennie. He's backed up by Yunus Musa, guys that will get the ball on the feet. We have a Dest who will overlap. We have a Robinson who will overlap. And what you see happening is you see the 2 center backs with the ball, right, playing the ball up to an Adams who very quickly all of a sudden has 5 guys in the midfield with him, right? So we have our 2 guys coming out on the wings, and then we have our 2 other midfielders that are helping him out. And all of a sudden, these guys pushing up to overlap, we create a lot of dangerous chances. And Adams has lanes, right? And as he looks up and down the field, he can go out on a lane, and he can see Dest coming up. He can go out on the other lane and see Robinson. He can go in through the lane and hit Christian Pasilic, who can turn and have the same things. You look at it tactically with those triangles, right? Little games inside big games. And we create a lot of those moments when we have players with that kind of talent. But in this game, we weren't sure if we should turn with the ball and go forward or if we should go back. And we have seen this once before towards the end of CONCACAF qualifying, where it felt like every time we got the ball, we'd go backwards. And we'd start to build out of the back, and we'd lose pressure, and we'd play the ball forward. And then we'd play the ball back into the pressure. And we had these very eerie moments where you did your job, you beat your man, you knocked the ball around, you're out of the press, and you almost like you were running a computer program said, okay, do it again. And we just played the ball back into the press. And that happened a lot in this game. We didn't know how to get out of the press, and so we just kind of played the ball into it all the time. And as a result, came up with tons of turnovers, right? We were fortunate that this game was only 2-0. And you if you go ahead and you look at the stats, we can pull some stats up, right? We look at some stats. Yeah, sure, 4 shots, right? When's the last time you did 0 shots on goal? You couldn't hit the target, right? Forget possession. Forget passing accuracy, right? My mind is blown that we're looking at 82% pass accuracy and we have the number of turnovers that we have, right? That's insanity to me that the game, we struggled this much in it. So going from the back, right? Touching on another point, right? We've been in the dark with our back four, okay? I don't think we're in the dark with our goalie, right? You heard it during the game. Matt Turner's going to be starting all the Europa Cup games. That's huge for Arsenal. That's huge for him. That's huge for us. He's going to get his experience. I don't see him losing this spot. He played very well in this game and was forced to play really well in this game. Tons of chances given up by the United States. Looking at our back four, Sam Vines, I don't think is what we're looking for. Sure, he hasn't played a ton of games with us, and maybe he can develop into a player that we're going to need him to have. But this certainly wasn't it. This wasn't it at all. Aaron Long, I thought, played a pretty miserable first 25 minutes. I don't think it got a whole lot better at all. This was the first game that I thought Walker Zimmerman looked kind of lost. And granted, the MLS isn't in season, so maybe that has something to do with it. But when you look at players like Tim Ream, who is in season, who is in form, who is both physically and tactically similar to a Walker Zimmerman with better ability to build out of the back and a lot more of an attacking presence, I would have liked to see him over an Aaron Long. I would have loved to see Joe Scally coming in over Sam Vines, right? And if you're not aware of the future lineups, we're going to touch on those for the lineup for Saudi Arabia because there's a lot of speculation. Scally's not going to play again, and we're going to get a player like DeAndre Yedlin. If you know DeAndre Yedlin is a lock, anyway, we'll get there. I enjoyed Brendan Aronson as a player. I thought Brendan Aronson was one of the few players on the field that allowed us to have moments of brilliance. He's still young. He still has a lot of youth, and I felt like there were a bunch of situations where he was really looking for someone else to help him, right? He fell victim, and many other players fell victim to that kind of hope strategy that I talked about before. If I give somebody more talented than me the ball, I'll just hope that they'll figure it out, and I won't support them to try to do anything. Luca De La Torre, I was kind of disappointed. I've really been pretty high on this guy. I've really liked him since he started playing. I thought he had a lot of pace, a lot of vision. He's very motivated. He's very fit. He just goes and goes and goes. And I felt like it did him only disservices in this game. I felt like we were rushed. I felt like we were panicked. I felt like we had lots of moments where we just were unsure. I mean, most of the field was unsure. And so looking at the, stepping back, looking at the whole team at first, this is not a great game for any kind of content creator to really talk about it. What really happened, right? I mean, the game ends and my brother messages me and he says, we're not going to have a whole lot to talk about. And in one way, maybe that gives us a lot to talk about. But in another way, teams have bad games. Maybe that was just it. Maybe this was a fluke. We struggled. One thing that was apparent, Japan played this game like it was a World Cup tune-up. We didn't. And I don't know why. Tying back into the first thing that I said, are we in the dark? It felt like there was something that not just we were missing, but that everybody on the field was missing. Something that I thought was interesting, I didn't agree with it, but I also didn't disagree with it, was that we're playing a Giovanni Reyna and a Brendan Aronson together. Now, what I do like about these two guys is they are both very talented and they're very goal-driven. They go forward with the ball. They have from a winger's perspective, tactically things I like. They have the confidence to take guys on. They have the wherewithal to back check and get the ball. And they can get dangerous balls into the box, all while being able to pinch and get on the backside of runs. Okay? They have enough individual pace that they can take down guys and they can recover defensively. They have lots of things you're looking for in a winger. I don't like or dislike either one of them more than Tim Weah, right? That really just comes down to little things maybe you see at training camp or just synergy and chemistry with other guys, and maybe it's just experience. The way that Brendan Aronson has been playing for Leeds, I really can't see you not starting him, and I do understand that that might be in place of a Tim Weah. It might be in place of a Christian Pulisic. It might be an entire tactics change. I'm totally aware of that, and I'm also totally fine with it. Like I said about Ferreira, I just don't think he does enough, especially if I have a player like Brendan Aronson, who I know is going to take guys on and I know is going to get balls into the box. Ferreira didn't appear to me in this first half as a guy who really was ball hungry. He wasn't fighting to get himself in a position to really get anything, and he was sort of just relying on his teammates to get him the ball, and it's two new guys. Maybe that's the chemistry of the players, and maybe that's just an individual trait of one of them alone. Again, I don't know. Looking at all the subs that we had come in, right? I was not a fan of the Jordan Morris sub, right? I just wasn't. I think he's fallen off a long way, and I just think he just seems like somebody who, like, we're trying to hide up front. He didn't do anything. And he was a great player. Maybe he still is a great player. He's not doing anything for us. We just kind of hit the ball up the field. He kind of runs after it. He doesn't win it. He puts on some kind of a press. The ball goes away, and he just never sees it. Right? Maybe that's an unfair view because the man didn't see the ball at all. But this has also been the last 3 or 4 games that we've played him. There just really hasn't been a wow factor. As far as McKenzie in the back, right, we're looking at similar problems, right? When Tillman comes on, when Cardoza comes on, when Reggie Cannon comes on, we just seem to have like a lot of these scenarios that are all really similar. Like we were too far gone in the game to really have anybody be able to make a meaningful impact, right? Japan playing a 4-4-2 with a really high press definitely allowed guys to sneak into those channels that we like to play through and prevent us from sort of starting the build out of the back. Because the couple times that we were able to make those first 2 passes, right, when that first ball got to Adams and Adams was able to get it out of his feet, it was like click, click, click. We were up on the attack. But when the ball got to a McKennie and got to an Adams or got to a De La Torre, and there wasn't immediately any kind of spice or creativity to go forward, then it just stopped and we saw a turnover and we saw that that was it, right? Now, as far as the goals are concerned, right, the first goal, it's a good goal. I'm glad it's upheld, right? I'm really glad it's upheld. Second goal is another great goal, right? There's no fault to us or Japan. I mean, these are just great goals that get scored, right? We don't generate any chances, so there's nothing to talk about for us here, right? Outside of Ferreira's just botching that header. Now, things that I thought were interesting, and I'm always going to bring this up. It just seems to be something I always want to talk about. I'm embarrassed for the refereeing again. I really am. I thought Aronson getting stomped down on was a borderline red card, right? There was no intent to play the ball. He was studs up. He was up in the air. I mean, he stepped clean down through him. It was not even a remote attempt to do a professional foul, and it was completely out of line for a friendly. The fact that he doesn't even walk, like, yikes, right? I mean, just like absolute yikes for me. We're looking at this, right? There's no yellow cards or red cards in the game, and there's 1 yellow card for the United States. And I mean, Taylor Twellman said it best, right? Like that foul's going to be a yellow card, but the tackle on Aronson isn't. And then you see it again with, I believe it was, I don't want to say it was Reggie Cannon. I think it was Mark McKenzie, but it could have been Cannon. Makes a tackle down the sideline and clears the ball out of bounds. I believe it was Reggie Cannon. And as he does, the Japanese player steps over him and very intentionally knees him in the back of the head, right? I know lots of those things happen and the referees hardly ever catch them, but to me, that was another moment where, yes, Japan got the result, but like the class of it was completely lost for me. I thought the game was really chippy. Obviously, people talked about the field conditions, right? A really easy way for me to shut that down is both teams played on the same field. So it's not like the United States had to play in a different field. It didn't really bother Japan too much, and they played the same kind of style, knock the ball around, play a high press, be aggressive. We tried to do the same thing, and we failed. And it it didn't work, and that kind of is unfortunately what it is, and it sucks for us. It sucks for us trying to get out of there and trying to go forward. What does this mean now? Right? We're fans of the United States. Has anything changed? You don't need any kind of expert analyst to tell you that if this is how we perform in the World Cup, we won't make it out of the group stage. Okay? If you told me to repick the group right now, I would tell you that I think Wales and Iran are going to get out of the group. I would. England on absolute poor performances, and this from us is just disgraceful. Now, it's easy for me to overlook this because of results against Morocco, because of the results against Uruguay. I can overlook this, but it leaves me again in the dark. I'm not a huge fan of the Saudi Arabia game. I'm not sure what we have to gain from the Saudi Arabia game outside of just putting in a dominant performance and winning 3 or 4-0. Maybe we do that. I don't know if it makes me feel any better knowing that Japan is a very quality team that we could be likely to face. And I don't know. I mean, they're on the other side of the bracket, at least, I guess. That's fortunate news, right? That we wouldn't have to face Japan until the finals, and it seems unlikely. I don't know. Going forward, we have Saudi Arabia. We're going to be playing them tomorrow, 2 p.m. And Berhalter talked in a press conference. He alluded to most of his starting lineup. We're going to see Deandre Yedlin. We're not sure if we're going to see Aronson or Reyna. We're going to see one of those guys up on the right, obviously without Tim Weah. And that's been concerning to some other people. I would personally like to see Joe Scally get some game time, but I could also see Berhalter going. The window has closed to be experimenting with new guys. And here we are trying to make sure that our experienced players, get the gears turning, get ready to go, and we get everybody ready for this World Cup. So I appreciate everybody tuning in. Obviously, drop a comment. If you agree, disagree, whatever it is, I really appreciate everybody tuning in, and be prepared for another video after our game, Saudi Arabia, United States, 2 p.m. We'll see you after that.